Okay, so how would the arc reactor affect the world? So this is basically me talking about arc reactor technology and how it would provide opportunities, but also provide very specific questions in terms of how the technology would be used by governments and so on. So, let's start this off with four major factors. First off, there's 143 tons of palladium in Russia. Take out three because, some of that might get lost to thieving and whatever. And you get, if they had arc reactor technology, enough power to run the US energy grid for 16.78 years. With US power consumption being so high, we're talking a couple of years of global power, at least. Second, Tony's special element is a form of vibranium. Third, the arc reactor is not impossible to make on your own, obviously. Fourth, the master from Hulk can get rich off of designing mutations which make people resistant to radiation. So these are the four major factors, and we're obviously going to point out PIMTech, but these are just at least the four major ones. Okay. First, step one of things to consider. In keeping with archetypes, the master could betray the US/UN military in designing super soldiers, but ones who work for him, he might use the Purple Man's genetic makeup to study it and then replicate certain processes on soldiers he is injected with his radiation vaccine or whatever, and trigger a mutation, creating weird mutant semi-Hulks. A result from this would be Red Hulk. Now, I'm assuming that he would work for the US/UN because General Ross, being at the UN, basically, obviously, it's General fucking Ross. He's the manifestation of everything that is wrong in American military politics. Of course, he's just using the UN. Do you know who runs NATO? Who's in charge of NATO? The US. Fucking US. It just... Step 2 to consider. Russian palladium resources would lead to investing in their own radioactive man program, creating people who can use the arc reactor technology by being resilient to radiation. In the process, they can create radioactive Superman. Now, we've seen hints at something like this in the TV shows with the Soviet version of superheroes and whatever, and they were kind of radioactive, so that's a thing. Step 3 to consider. Tony's technology plus PIMTech could result in a near infinite arc reactor blaster powered arc blaster in his hands. He can have the most powerful arc reactors in existence shrunk to the size of his hands, something the size of a car with various vibranium resources behind it, and he just shrinks it and puts it on his hands. I mean, imagine the longevity, imagine the power of such a device. Tony just solving the PIMTech problem would give him such a powerful reactor. Sub-reactors. Number 4. Tony, in anticipation of this, could design a giant robot which is just gigantic, and whenever there's a Tony Stark / Iron Man TV show, there usually is a giant robot man. Fifth, now, while designing this giant robot man, he wouldn't have enough resources early on to power it because it would consume a lot of energy, so it might stay in a warehouse for a while. Now, fifth, if someone brings a ton of palladium to where this robot is being held and hacks the system, this giant robot could become a super weapon, and Tony would have to fight it. Sixth, now this giant robot, by the way, would be mostly hollow on the inside because it would be essentially an automated suit for Tony, right? So, sixth, Tony's father invented an implosive compound that can destroy entire buildings. We've seen anti-miracle people, nowadays it's probably gonna be mutants, because mutants are gonna show up sooner or later in the Marvel universe. So Tony's father created an implosive compound, and the formula got out through a shield agent one time, and these anti-miracle people have these special bullets that can literally crush entire buildings. If someone were to take a giant load of this compound, slap on a few arc reactors on the sides, and shrink that to the size of a bullet, Yellow Jacket could become one of the most powerful villains inside of the entire Marvel universe. Like, imagine shooting a tiny little object forward, and this tiny little object all of a sudden decompresses and splatters an entire area with this compound, And this results in a sort of a vacuum annihilation, a crushing. Think of the Hellmouth at the end of Buffy. A slightly bit smaller than that, but still a fucking giant crater. I mean, enough of these compound shots could literally result in a giant fucking landscape destroying implosion. A literal Hellmouth could be made like at the end, the one at the end of Buffy. So, step 7. If palladium can result in powering a vibranium power plant, then Tony and Bruce could have a secret underwater or underground manufacturing plant. This could be viewed as a challenge by any world leader on the world, and by anyone on the world could view Tony Stark and Bruce Banner using palladium to power, or some sort of palladium alternative to power a vibranium manufacturing plant. But, and most especially, Wakandan leadership may view this as a direct economic threat to their country, and as a response to this, various Wakandan leadership people could instigate operations to attack this plant. Black Panther could go into shutting down this plant. Wakandan leadership could have a problem with Black Panther not wanting to shut down this plant. This could be a major international incident in terms of Tony's power supply. And it could result in a massive amount of tension with the Avengers if they reform, and it could lead to a secondary split. So these are 5 steps to consider, and later on I'll do more and more videos talking about this concept.